Joined by Chief Commissioner Graham Ashton, Police and Emergency Services Minister Lisa Neville, to make some very important announcements for the meeting of the National Cabinet last night. As I think you know, because the Prime Minister has taken you through in broad detail, the National Cabinet took some unprecedented steps, huge steps yesterday, to keep Victorians and indeed Australians safe. Never before have we seen a situation where venues, such a large part of our economy, has essentially been shut down. This is appropriate. It's painful, but it is absolutely appropriate. Now, I'll run through each of those settings, and of course we'll move to questions, but these bans, this shutdown, includes pubs, clubs, nightclubs, Crown Casino, licensed venues in hotels and pubs beyond that, gyms, indoor sporting venues, places of worship, cinemas, entertainment venues, weddings and funerals. This list is comprehensive. This list basically represents a very big step, a massive step that is essential to keep Victorians and Australians safe. Now, these restrictions will come into force from midday today and will remain in force until midnight, April the 13th. They may well, I think it's fair to say, it is highly likely that they will be further extended beyond that. Now, this is step one, and it's called step one for a reason. There is almost certainly going to be a step two, and maybe even beyond that. The most important thing coming out of last night's National Cabinet meeting, we needed to take a big step, and that's exactly what we have done. Now, if I could go to schools, and I'll make some general comments about the behaviour of Victorians and what we expect and what's at stake here. Schools, as you know, were due to break up. Holidays were scheduled to begin on Friday. There was at least one pupil-free day in the week also. We have taken the decision, and the Chief Health Officer of Victoria is completely comfortable and supportive of this, to bring forward the school holidays and to spend these precious days without kids at school to plan for remote, flexible, distance learning in the event that we need to move to that way of teaching and learning. These days will be very, very important, and the Deputy Premier and Education Minister, James Merlino, will have more to say at the appropriate time when it comes to the different steps that we're putting in place so that our kids can continue to be taught, to learn in the event that we have to go to that mode. The term 2 is scheduled to begin on the 14th of April, and people should plan for term 2 to begin on the 14th of April unless I have advice, medical advice, not to proceed with term 2 at school. I'm not making that announcement today, but term 2 begins on the 14th. But holidays begin from the end of the school day today. Now, just before I go to some general comments about what each of us must do to save lives, I just want to make a couple of comments about the forthcoming school holidays. These are not ordinary school holidays. Every Australian has been advised not to undertake non-essential travel. And I'm advising every family that school holidays where kids might be going and staying at friends' places, kids might be out going to shopping malls and doing all the usual things, that is not appropriate. We can't write a rule for that, but it is not appropriate. That is the clear advice. It'll be a very different school holiday than usual, and it needs to be. Because if we don't start taking these things seriously, then we will be talking about quite amazing tragedy. Now, many Victorians are doing the right thing. They are keeping their distance. They are observing the rules that have been written. But there are many Victorians who are acting selfishly. They are not taking this seriously. They are doing the wrong thing. And if that continues, then people will die. It is easy to do the right thing for your family and for people that you have never met. I just want to make this point. Whether you call it mateship, whether you call it being Australian, being Victorian, whether you call it decent behaviour, civic duty, I don't care what you call it, just do it. You need to keep your distance, you need to observe the rules, and that is not an option. That's why today I'm joined by the Chief Commissioner, and I can also announce that Victoria Police have allocated 500 police members to a special task force that is all about enforcing the coronavirus rules that have been put in place. In some respects, it is disappointing that it has come to this. But we've seen people on beaches in Sydney. We could just as easily have seen pictures of people in bars and cafes and restaurants and nightclubs here in Melbourne and right across Victoria. It's unacceptable. It will cost lives. It will cost lives.
Right, we'll leave the Premier there. We're recording the Premier's press conference. We'll come back to that in a few moments. Josh Frydenberg is a pretty busy man at the moment. He had to delay his call because he had to take a call from the Prime Minister. So, Josh, we really appreciate you fitting us into your schedule today, mate. Thank you so much for joining us. Josh, good morning to you. First of all, mate, what is the movement going in conversations with the Prime Minister? Is it has it settled down at all from what we're hearing from the Premier Dan Andrews, who's visibly upset, and you could hear the audio there that he's had to put 500 police to get people to pull their heads in. What's the situation from you from the federal government overnight?
Well, Daniel Andrews and the Prime Minister are both absolutely right. This is a deadly serious situation. And Australians and Victorians need to take this situation as seriously as they can. If we don't put in place the social distancing requirements, if we don't prevent these major social gatherings, then the virus will spread to more people, and it's not just the vulnerable elderly who are in danger, it's the broader population. You only have to see what has happened in the United States and in Italy, and the lockdown and the pain and the death that has been caused by the coronavirus over there, to know that if we don't take these measures, it will get worse here at home. So the measures that were announced by the Prime Minister, reflecting agreement of the National Cabinet last night, based on medical advice, is that the clubs, is that the casinos, is that the cinemas will close from midday today, and the cafes and the restaurants, Eddie, will move to takeaway only. This is what we need to do at phase one to protect the public from the broader spread of the virus.
Can I ask you, Josh, that we've got a lot of callers coming through this morning from the building industry. You may not know the answer to this, but are they still able to work? Is that an essential service, or is there degrees of essential service in the building industry at the moment?
Well, there will be a range of workplaces that will still be able to go forward as long as they have put in place these restrictions around social distancing. That's the key point. That is what will affect those particular industries, and the Prime Minister was very clear that only those particular gatherings that he announced last night will be banned from midday today. So he didn't mention the construction industry in that context. What we do know in relation to schools is that the states work on different timetables, and Daniel Andrews has made clear of when the schools will rise here this week in Victoria. But his expectation is that the schools will be able to come back in the next term, but again, that will only depend on the medical advice giving that an all clear.
Josh, thanks for joining us. The amount of jobs that have already been lost in the hospitality sector and the gym industry and the industries that have been shut down as of midday today are in the tens and tens of thousands. We're getting so many calls from people saying, what do I do with my mortgage? What do I do with my rent? How do I stay in my house? How do I sustain myself? Have you got any advice for people this morning that are about to run out of cash?
Okay, let me make a few points. The first is, I've been working hand in glove with the banks, where they have provided to all small businesses with loans that they will not have to provide interest payments, principal payments for the next 6 months. So if you are a small business person that is mortgaged your home and you fit that particular threshold that they've set, and you've got a car loan or you've got taken out a loan to do a fit out of your shop, you won't have interest and principal payments for the next 6 months. That's really important. Some of the banks have gone further to say if you've got a mortgage and you're not a small business person, then you'll also have that fee relief or that interest payment relief. So every bank has set up their own structures and their own systems to take calls from their customers who have felt their income being significantly reduced or their jobs lost as a result of the coronavirus to get that help. So please contact your bank as soon as possible. The second thing is that yesterday, the Prime Minister and I announced an unprecedented enhancement of Australia's safety net to cushion the blow of those people who are doing it tough. So we're creating a new $550 payment which is available to people whose income falls below $1,075 a fortnight. So you'll get $550 a fortnight if your income has fallen below $1,075 a fortnight, and you will also, depending on your income, be able to access New Start as well, which brings the total to just over $1,100. So we've significantly beefed up that safety net. The other thing that we're doing, and by the way, that applies to a sole trader. So if you're a sole trader and you're listening and you just employ yourself, and there are millions of them, or you're a casual worker and you've still got a few hours and you've still got a few customers, you can still access this $550 payment in full if your income is below $1,075 a fortnight. The other thing that we've done, Das and Eddie, is that we're giving people early access to their superannuation. So if your income or your hours worked has fallen below more than 20% from the 1st of January this year, then you can take up to $10,000 of your superannuation this financial year and up to $10,000 out of your superannuation next financial year. And normally, if you're in a situation of financial hardship, you'd face a tax rate of about 22% when you took money out of your super. We're now saying it's completely tax-free. So we want people to obviously access their leave entitlements from their existing employer. We want people to use their savings if they've got them, but we also want people to be able to benefit from a much bigger and more generous social welfare safety net.
Well, Josh, that's fantastic work you've done. It's such a hard time for people. As the Treasurer, can you just say to people this morning who are getting up, we've got a lot of people who are just so nervous, so uptight. I think everybody is frightened in the community. Is there any words of comfort other than what you've said there, and that's the tangible words that you've been able to put together with these wonderful plans that you've put in place? What can you say to people this morning?
I'd say to them that we will do what it takes to support the community at this time. There will be the other side of this, Eddie. We will get to the other side because we know that there will be a vaccine for the coronavirus. But until we get there, it's going to be tough. This is war by another means. I mean, these are unprecedented situations, and people need to look after one another. People need to respect one another. People need to remember that we are Australians first and foremost. We're one community. We're not Victorians and then Australians. We're all Australians. And this is our Team Australia moment. And whether somebody is working in the private sector or in the public sector, whether someone's a health professional or a politician, whether someone's a radio personality or a bricklayer, we're all in this together and we're all equal. And I can tell you from the Prime Minister down, we will do everything possible. And I'm talking to Daniel Andrews regularly. So is the Prime Minister. I spoke to Tim Pallas, the State Treasurer, yesterday. We're in constant contact and we're all working towards supporting Aussie jobs and Aussie businesses.
Josh, I love your line, Team Australia, and that is the spirit we're trying to capture here on the Hot Breakfast this morning and get people into that mode and solution. But you mentioned individual areas like a hairdresser or a bricklayer, you said, or vet care. I mean, essential services, Josh, is probably something that people are trying to work out. You close down the pubs, the bars, the gyms, the cinemas, the cafes, but can you go to your local hairdresser? Does it extend?
You can.
Yep.
You can, and does how people need to think about it is at these places of mass social gatherings, we cannot enforce effectively that social distancing requirement that we need, right? It's just too difficult at that pub, at that club, at the cinema, in the way that we would need to. So what we have said is that those social gathering places will be closed from midday. That's the medical advice. But in other places of work, whether it's in the construction industry or whether it's at that hairdresser, you may be able to put in place those responsible social distancing measures and then be able to work it through. But I just want to make it also very clear, this is phase one, and the virus is continuing to evolve and continuing to spread. So nothing is set and forget, and the medical experts are continuing to assess the situation, and as long as they provide us advice to do something, we will do it.
Josh, we're getting a number of calls through from people saying, do we have to continue paying our bills?
Well, that's where every energy company, every landlord, every bank needs to work proactively and generously with their customers, because there's an alignment of interest here, Eddie. We want the banks to get to the other side, and we want all their customers, their businesses, to get to the other side, and so do they. Because if you're going to have a healthy bank, you need a healthy set of customers, and so we're all in this together.
One final one. Stuart from Belgrave has called through. He said he's a self-funded retiree. His rental property is his main stream of income, and his tenant can't pay. Where does he go with that?
Well, again, there's work that's being done for landlords by the state governments, looking at what sort of ability they can give to waive particular land taxes and the like, which then can be passed on to the tenant in the form of a rent-free holiday, if you like. So there are things that are being thought of and worked through by the state governments in that respect.
Good on you, Josh. You're a busy man, mate, and we appreciate you taking the time out this morning to speak to Triple M's Hot Breakfast to the people of Melbourne. You always make yourself available. You're going through a really complex time yourself, mate, but you're doing it with aplomb. I thought your performance yesterday at the press conference with the Prime Minister was fantastic, and as you said, this is step one. There's more steps to come, but we're all pretty confident that we've got somebody who's running the show with compassion, but also with great intellect. So good luck, mate.
I appreciate that, and look, all the very best to all your listeners today. They need to be reassured that we will stand with them all the way.
Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has been a great friend of Triple M's Hot Breakfast and made himself available. As you can imagine, the complexity of what is going on at the moment. We'll take some more calls. 133353. Just heard from the Federal Treasurer. Keen to hear from you again this morning. Get on the line. 133353.
Australia's